All right. Hello, everyone who's watching live and watching the replay. My name is Rebecca Taylor Shaw, and I'm really excited to share a topic today that is close to my heart. And we'll be talking about emotional strength and fitness. I really thought long and hard about how I could contribute to this amazing group in a way that I really felt was worth your time. Our time is so precious. We've got a lot to study and learn in this group. And so I wanted to make it worth your while. So I'm going to lead off this year and in the coming weeks on this topic. And first, I'm going to go through a slideshow that I've got for you guys, and then we'll kind of riff from there. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. At the end, we can unmute and open up video even. So let me share my screen. Let me see here. Here. So today we're going to be talking about emotional strength training, the A to Z of emotional fitness, and how I really believe that it's worth considering. And if you're watching this show at all, maybe you've had an instinct about it, but for many people, the missing layer of optimization is emotional fitness. And that's what we'll be diving into today. So the problem we don't name, most people wouldn't consider that they have an emotional problem, although some people might. But pretty much everyone who would say they have an emotional problem, maybe depression, anxiety that's actually been diagnosed, or even people who have situational stress, emotional stress, or just emotions that come and go, but somehow destabilize you or keep you from self regulating. How I look at it is that we don't have a good relationship with our emotions, and I'll be explaining that tonight in this presentation. But the common patterns that people will basically get into when they don't have a good relationship with their emotions is you're functional, but you've got this low-lying stress, tenseness, maybe anxiety in the background. I know that one of the health coaches that spoke at Jay's conference last year taught me something about learning to become more able very quickly to switch from parasympathetic mode to sympathetic mode, which is the fight or flight tension to being relaxed. And I have another video on that in the group. If you go back, you'll see. And that's really worth watching because apparently what happens for a lot of people when they work out, they'll stay in sympathetic mode long after they've done that workout. And the latest research says that if you really want to get the most out of your workout and really be healthy, it's like your resting heart rate. How low can you get that? How quickly after you work out? Well, it's kind of the same with your emotions. How quickly can you return to center after you've had an emotionally stressful situation, a tense meeting, a conversation, something stressful on the freeway? Do you let that stuff hang with you, or are you able to return to your neutral, calm kind of baseline in a matter of minutes? And I know that was something that really made a big difference for me is when I learned to be more mindful of that. So a lot of people are just trying to power through their stress instead of recovering. Just push through it, push it to the back of your mind. Some people know what to do, but don't consistently do it. But I would probably argue that most people don't know what to do because it's just not emotional fitness is not something we teach or talk about. So there are these repeating patterns despite insight and intelligence, and that speaks to the conscious mind versus the subconscious mind. You may cognitively know that it would be good for you to get a handle on your stress or your anxiety or having irrational bouts of anger, and you know they're irrational, but that doesn't stop the patterns. So this isn't weakness. It doesn't mean you're a weak person. It doesn't mean you're too sensitive, although there are, and you can go back through my videos on this too. I do a presentation on the highly sensitive person. But it's really an untrained emotional system is how I want you to think about it. You just haven't trained yourself yet how to have a better relationship with your emotions and how to work with them instead of having them work against you. So when we talk about emotions for health optimization, we're talking about, like I said earlier, nervous system regulation. If your emotions are not in check, your hormones are probably affected. Certainly cortisol and emotions are a strong correlation. They even have found that inflammation is correlated to chronic stress. And then the scary thing about that is that inflammation is also one of the main factors that predisposes us to any kind of genetic problem that we are predisposed to. I had my DNA test done, and the doctor went through and showed me, what my markers were for, diabetes and dementia and gut issues. And his main overall thing was to, for the rest of my life, really focus on reducing inflammation as one of the things I should be mindful of. And now you're seeing that your emotions can cause or have a causality to that. So it's worth looking into it for that reason. Recovery. I think how I look at this is recovery, not just from your workouts, but also recovery after you've had an emotionally stressful situation. Decision making under stress is if your mind's in that fight or flight mode, you're going to look at things very differently than from a calm perspective. So emotions influence our consistency with habits. A lot of people will be going along well with a food protocol and then they fall off the wagon due to stress. Just a lot of people, the oldest coping mechanism is food. So you can optimize everything else, but if your emotional system is undertrained, it could be costing. So just a little bit about me for those of you who don't know me, haven't seen me before, or haven't watched any of the videos. And Mindset Mastery is where you can find my videos inside this group. But I'm Rebecca Taylor Shaw. I'm the owner of Charleston Hypnosis Center, which is in the Charleston area of South Carolina. I've been a hypnotherapist now for over 30 years, which is hard to believe because I feel like I'm only 35, or at least I've hypnotized myself to believe that. And I'm going to stick with it. So I'm the founder of the American Hypnosis and Coaching Academy. So part of my legacy is wanting to teach coaches and integrate hypnosis and coaching so people get whole-brained solutions for transformation and lasting transformation. And along with that, I'm a certified master trainer, certified in clinical hypnotherapy. I do have one of those paper degrees from University of Virginia, which is my alma mater, and I love that. And I'm also a certified divorce coach here in South Carolina. So if I could leave a legacy tomorrow, I would found a nonprofit to teach emotional fitness to parents and kids. And this is really close to my heart with this because I grew up with an alcoholic father, and I really believe that that was his coping mechanism. And I've seen people suffering with depression and anxiety and food addiction and things like that. All at the root core of that is because we are not taught as a society how to effectively deal with emotions, how to recognize them, how to listen to them. It's like if it feels bad, it is bad. Somewhat, as a kid, and then we get these messages from society that is the antithesis of emotional fitness. It's like, just suck it up. Big boys don't cry. Actually, a lot of women that I've met, their mothers would tell them not to cry. So it's not just boys who got that message, but women as well, little girls as well. Um, I was told stop being so sensitive. And so I thought my sensitivity was a defect. Later on in life, I discovered it was a genetic trait. But until then, if you are growing up in a culture where it's spoken or unspoken that you're too sensitive or you shouldn't express anger or sadness or any kind of disruptive emotion, you can turn that around to be a lower self-concept, to reflect back on you like you're not good enough or you're weak or you're sensitive, etc. And so there's a lot of toxic beliefs out there that are just part of our culture. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's lots of these beliefs that we've been taught. It's better not to feel. It's better to feel numb than to feel stressful emotions. Sorry, I have a typo there, but um, there's a lot of people that would rather not feel at all. I know in having a discussion with my young adult son one time, we had a really profound conversation, and he said, in his world and the guys that he knows, the only acceptable emotion for men is anger, which is really interesting because, for some people, even anger isn't acceptable, right, in their family culture or whatever. But men find it easier sometimes to express anger. And next week will be my first week of targeting specific emotions, and I'll actually be targeting and talking about anger specifically. Um, we don't talk about emotions. We try to rationalize with each other to get our needs met. And and then sometimes when you're growing up, this was a really profound insight for me too, that for a lot of kids, the idea that they took on was it's better not to feel than to have an emotion like sadness or loneliness and no one attend to it. So then the coping mechanism becomes to not feel, to try to not feel, to suppress. And then coping mechanisms, because we are not taught healthy ones, avoidance, avoiding conflict, avoiding uncomfortable situations and conversations, which really can damage relationships with partners and kids if we fear conflict. Denial, just denying our own feelings, can be just as unhealthy. Dismissing them, dismissing yourself, dismissing other people's emotions, um, numbing. So numbing, we all know about that. So that would be alcohol, drugs, food, social media, whatever it is. So the thing is, look at it this way. If you have a healthy relationship with your emotions and you value them, and we'll talk about in a few minutes why you should value them, that you wouldn't want to numb them at all. You would want to work with them, listen to them, and understand that they're a very healthy part of you that can drive intuition and passion and so many good things. Um, then oftentimes too, we bottle these emotions up. And then again, like with anger, it can be this overreaction where we suppress it for so long, and then we're like the fire breathing dragon over something mundane. For many people who have chronic anxiety, they can get into this thing I call the crazy eight. So it's like, I'm anxious, anxious, anxious. Oh my gosh, I can't take this anxiety anymore. And then they sink into depression as a way, as a shut off valve to not feel, to try to not feel. And that's a really unhealthy, physically toxic loop to get into. And so oftentimes for a lot of my clients, the way to get out of depression is to actually work on the anxiety first. And so if you can get the anxiety under control, the subconscious mind won't need that shut off valve anymore that says, I just want to sleep and not feel, which is not the root of all depression, but many people I've met do fall into that pattern of what I call the crazy eight. So, suppressing emotions can have a very significant consequence on your mental health, your physical health, relationships, diminished self awareness, authenticity. Now, the other thing is that when we suppress emotions, disown them, don't like them, look at them as weakness or the enemy, we oftentimes will have traumatic events from the past, intense emotional experiences from the past that get imprinted into the body and don't get healed, don't get resolved. And so they get locked into the body. So what happens is something intense will happen. You'll have this rush of adrenaline, something, an upset, an anger, a fear, and then it'll create a lasting impression. You know, it might be that something like your parents accidentally lost you in the mall for several hours, and then you're scared, you're this little kid, you can't find your parents, and then you're in that adrenalized state. And then whatever beliefs you take on in that moment from that child perspective, the world is not safe. I can't rely on family members. This is part of our reptilian survival mechanism, but it can wreak havoc on your life when those kinds of things like the mall incident I'm describing happen and you don't feel those things because the subconscious mind doesn't have a sense of time for unhealed traumatic events like that. And they can cause you to be overreactive to situations. And I can tell you this from doing hypnotherapy for 30 years. If you have a situation where you feel like emotionally you're overreacting to the situation, it is almost always an indicator. In fact, I can't ever remember when it wasn't an indicator of some unhealed traumatic event in the past that created the same feeling. So, for example, that mall incident, let's say that happened when you were 3 or 4 years old, then you might have situations now as an adult where you have very irrational abandonment, anxiety. Let's say you text someone and you don't hear back from them in a timely manner where you would expect to. And you know that your feelings of anxiety and even like a somatic kind of fight or flight response are completely quote unquote irrational. That is always a dead giveaway that your body has held on to something from the past, an emotional imprint that needs to be healed or you would benefit from being healed. And there's a very specific process for doing that in hypnotherapy. So that's kind of a tip off for you if you have excessive emotions. If you find yourself just blowing up at people for little things, you get angry. It could be that when you were a child, something happened that made you feel powerless. And that's a lot of times what it could be. It could also be just any kind of negative belief that you took on about yourself that if it seems your reaction's overboard, you would definitely want to look into that. Okay. So on the emotional level, like I said, there is no such thing as time for unhealed emotional events. Um, We're not taught how to do those, even if kids go to therapy, talk therapy, art therapy, stuff like that. It may or may not heal those things. Sometimes, of course, therapy does, but if you finding that therapy falls short for you on healing something from the past or just healing a chronic emotion, it could be that there's something still unhealed from childhood in the subconscious mind. So the goal now is to experience emotion without suppressing or feeling overwhelmed. Emotions should be like the weather. They come through, they pass like waves, they come through you, they bring in awareness and they go. They don't get stuck. They don't, create overwhelm. And when you can have that, that really actually is when you talk about emotional regulation, let's be clear, is not emotional suppression. I want to stop on that for a second, really hear that. It is not suppressing your emotions. Emotional regulation is this sense that you're in the ocean, those waves are washing over you, but you're strong. You feel like you can handle those emotions. And therefore, you're really what you're regulating is your reaction to them. You're not regulating the emotion so much, but you can regulate your reaction to them. So that means you recover faster. That you let those emotions inform you, and we'll be talking about that in just a second, without them running your reactions and your responses. Um, so you're going to train your capacity basically um, to handle emotions better. And part of that is understanding this emotional fitness concept is understanding having this different relationship with your emotions is that they offer you a healthy inner feedback loop. They are healthy, they're part of your inner GPS, they're part of your inner feedback loop. They'll reveal to you where you may need to do some healing in the past. They also reveal to you where your current beliefs and narratives may be out of alignment with who you want to be, your self concept, or what you want to achieve. So, those emotions offer very, very valuable targeted insight to what's going on in your inner world, your beliefs, your narratives, old baggage, etc. They also can offer intuitive guidance. Sometimes you'll know or have a feeling about something, obviously, gut feeling, without having the fact. So there's a benefit in sitting with your emotions, letting yourself fully experience them instead of suppressing them, as we've been talking about. You'll get increased self awareness. You increase self acceptance. I can sit with this emotion without having to suppress it or transmute it in any way. That is stepping into a whole other level of power when you don't need to expend energy suppressing emotions. So imagine you're in a swimming pool and you've got a beach ball and you're trying to hold it under the surface of the water. That takes energy, right? It takes you suppressing that ball. And so when you can sit with an emotion, allow the awareness of it to come forward, reveal to you what it's about, then you're in relationship with your emotions. You're looking at them as something to be honored, something that guides you from within instead of a defect or something that needs to be suppressed. Overall, when you learn emotional fitness, you'll definitely improve your mental health because you're not battling yourself, you're not shaming yourself for having these defective, less than emotions. It enhances relationships. When you can own how you feel and not project it onto someone else or blame anyone else for how you feel, your relationships just hands down improve as well. Your resilience improves, personal growth improves. Emotional fitness is just such a game changer for your life. Each emotion This is my quote, is an invitation pointing to a deeper insight, both within yourself and others, especially if you approach it with a spirit of curiosity or exploration. So that's where you want to go when you have an emotion, instead of suppressing it or disregarding it, dismissing it, disowning it, or hating it. You sit with that emotion with interested curiosity. What is this emotion? What am I feeling? I have met people who literally, men and women, who tell me they don't know what they're feeling in the moment. And to me, that's just another sign of, the culture that they grew up in, to have a situation where um, they don't know what they're feeling. So this is how I like to start this understanding of emotions, that if you're going to have this better relationship with them, imagine they're like email. Okay, we all delete emails that we don't open, especially these days when we get bombarded. But imagine that these emails, these emotions that are like emails, are like the start ones, the ones that say, you've got to open this one. And this is my pointers, which I'd like you to think about now with emotions. They're messages from your subconscious mind, because emotions derive from the subconscious. Don't block them, or you could miss an important message. Open them regularly for optimal functioning. Some contain vital information that could save your life, an instinct. I tell the story years ago how I kept getting this feeling to change an airline flight, and I was supposed to fly on 9/11, and I just kept getting this feeling to change my flight to a different day, and I changed it out of Dulles. I would have been on flight 77. I changed it to the next day. And, intuition doesn't come to you screaming. If you're about to step off the curb and a car was coming, you might have a raging emotion come up at you that says stop and gives you this intense fear. But most of the time, your emotions are much more subtle when they're trying to guide you. So some could save your life. Some you might need to respond to because it's pointing you to where you need to heal something. And also where your beliefs may be out of alignment with what you want to achieve. So some you should unsubscribe from if they're negative directed towards you, but you're not going to know what those emotions are and how to sift through them unless you get really good at listening to them, paying attention to them, and developing this different relationship with them where you see them as a beneficial part of your life, and you're navigating through life. So I'm going to go over this just briefly today, and then we'll dive in deeper as the weeks progress and we go through the individual emotions and feelings and things like that I'll be going over with you. So, but the idea is this: you want to identify the emotion that you're feeling. For some people, that's easy. For some people, it's not so easy. So clearly asking yourself, what am I feeling right now? You might be feeling more than one thing, but if you can name it and be as precise as possible, then you're shifting out of suppression and dismissiveness into interested curiosity. So you're just saying, okay, what am I feeling right now? And being able to sit with that emotion and just be aware of it is very, very empowering and healthy. Then what you would want to do is kind of explore the circumstances around that feeling. And when I say uncover the narrative, so you can put two people in the ocean. One person's happy, one person's afraid. And the only difference, it's not the circumstances, it's their story about the ocean. So to understand the narratives behind your emotions is really, really vital, because once you understand the narratives, and you can ask yourself, is that story valid? Did it used to be valid? Is it intuition, or is it what I call baggage? And if it's baggage, it could be an old story, an old narrative that isn't applicable anymore. But if you just suppress the emotion or ignore it or drink it away or etc., then you'll never get through this process of potentially having some really important intuition guide you on something, or being able to feel something from the past and let something go because an emotion is uh, pointing you to that or helping you to overcome something. Let's say you have fear of public speaking, and most people just try to white knuckle it, push through it, etc. If you can sit with that feeling, notice where you feel it in your body, uncover what the story is. I'm afraid people will judge me, etc. Then you can start working on upgrading your belief system, either on your own or with affirmations or hypnosis recordings. So that's the empowerment process there, and that's the emotional fitness uh, step. So your emotions are part of your inner feedback loop. They're messages from the subconscious mind. They're your personal truth. They're not universal truth. And here's the thing, you can't selectively numb. So if you're trying to numb out the quote unquote uncomfortable feelings or bad feelings, you're also numbing out joy, happiness. And they provide intuitive guidance, and they'll reveal where you can upgrade your beliefs to feel happier, healthier, more productive, and achieve your goals. So again, you want to identify the emotions, understand the narratives, the story behind that emotion, explore what that history of that story is or that emotion. Is it valid? Is it in alignment now with who I want to be? Is there a new belief? So you're going to challenge those emotional narratives if they're not working for you. And I will even joke with myself sometimes if I'm having a stressful emotion. I'll be like, okay, what am I feeling right now? What's the story? How's that story working for me? And I'll be like, oh, that story isn't working for me. Okay, then I can change my story. But you can't change your story if you don't know what it is. And you can't know your story unless you're willing to feel the emotion and look at it as an offering to you from your deeper wisdom. So, if you guys are interested in understanding more about this beyond the series that I'll be teaching, these are some books I highly recommend. The Body Keeps the Score, um, Brain, Mind, and Body and the Healing of Trauma, Permission to Feel, Unlocking the Power of Emotions to Help Our Kids and Ourselves and Our Society Thrive, Emotional Intimacy Guide, and The Divided Mind by John Sarno is a really, really fascinating book. He originally wrote the book Mind Over Back Pain, and then he went on to write The Divided Mind, which is one of the books I ask my students to read when they're training in hypnotherapy, because a lot of, pretty much from his perspective, and I believe this too, that all health conditions have a mental an emotional component to them. And if you can understand what that inner conflict is, you can contribute to your own healing journey by identifying and removing that inner conflict, which your emotions will guide you on. Okay, so that is the end of this overview, kicking off emotional strength training inside in the group for optimizing you on every level. If you have interest in working with me privately, you can check out, I have charlestonhypnosiscenter.com, RebeccaTaylorshaw.com. And then next week, we'll be discussing the specific topic of emotional fitness as it relates to anger. So I'll be talking about my take on anger, what it truly is, how to resolve it, and try to keep these talks to about 30 minutes or less so that you can get some good information and useful steps in a short amount of time. All right, guys, thanks so much. Um, I'm glad you're here, glad you're watching, and have a great week.